Who am I? From 1970 to 1974, I was a Bible Christian ed major at Alliance University, now closed. From there, I got my Bachelor of Science degree. In 1976 through 1979, I studied for my MDiv at Mackey Theological Seminary and finished the Doctor of Ministry in Poetry at the Graduate Theological Foundation. In 1999, with Brother Kevin and Brother Guy, I founded the Anglican Order of Preachers. In 2011, received a THD in Worship Studies from Evangel Christian University, and in 2012, completed the PhD at Trinity Theological Seminary and the Doctor of Sacred Theology at Laud Hall in Worship as Evangelism. That completed a successful demolishing of the book by Sally Morgenthaler, Worship Evangelism. We approach today an enormously great theme. St. Thomas Aquinas is often characterized as a cold rationalist, but once you center him on grace, he suddenly feels very Augustinian, very biblical, very active, very alive. Chesterton called Thomas the dumb ox. It was a term given to him by his students, for he was quite large, and he had a very unassuming nature. Here in this 45-minute academic devotional in structure, I endeavor to keep grace at the center and give you a clear narrative arc. The tangent of grace necessarily goes through Aquinas if we're to capture the immensity of the character of Trinitarian grace. Thomas Aquinas was, after all, after Aristotle and Augustine, one who approaches truth or searches for truth becomes the primary historical synthesizer. Taught within the framework of scholasticism, he was an Italian Dominican who taught most of his life in France. He became the mover who takes Christianity from its own scholastic, stuck-in-the-mud kind of orthodoxy, which was so close to Platonism. And from that, he sets up his books and sets up all his writings to be almost an encyclopedic work on Christianity. He discovers grace, which moves him intellectually and spiritually into the choice of accepting grace or rejecting it. Grace becomes more and more present in his writings on philosophy and spirituality. So today we're going to look at the primacy of grace, the primacy of God's grace, Aquinas interpreted by me, which I call ubiquitous grace. My book is almost finished. You'll see it in about a year. Secondly, grace perfects our nature. That's Aquinas and Mackey's commentary on Philippians. I'm sorry, it can't be Philippians 2. I think maybe it is. Philippians 2, 12 and 13. Clearly, there are misconceptions about Aquinas. Key misconceptions to address are that Aquinas put reason over grace. No, Aquinas put reason and grace together, rather, and synthesizes them. Aquinas, his medieval works almost appear as works righteousness before he stumbles hard on grace. And third, he's proto-Pelagian. Most Protestant ears say that he has got that works righteousness in there. He doesn't, as we'll see when we get to Philippians chapter 2. For Aquinas, grace is absolutely primary, necessary for revelation, necessary for illumination, for salvation, for merit, for perseverance, and even for the healing of the human nature itself. Aquinas does not teach that man climbs to God by reason. He teaches that God descends to man by grace, and reason learns to walk again only when grace and because grace heals it. Aquinas had a view of human nature after the fall. It shows why grace is necessary at all. Aquinas follows Augustine. The fall does not destroy nature, it wounds it. The intellect is darkened, the will is weakened, the passions are disordered, and the person is turned in on himself. I turn to Bishop Robert Barron on this. He says there are 4 wounds of sin that need grace to get us out of these 4 tracks of mud, so to speak. Ignorance, which is a sin against the intellect. Malice, which is a sin against our will. Weakness, which is an irascible appetite. And concupiscence, which is a concupiscible appetite. Man can do natural good, but he cannot order himself to do his supernatural end without grace. Natural reason is insufficient for salvation. Aquinas is explicit in this. Without grace, man cannot merit eternal life. Well, we're not supposed to merit eternal life, the Protestants say. Well, yes, we are. What are you going to say to God when you get to heaven? I'm here by grace. This already places Aquinas firmly against Pelagianism. Now, what's Aquinas mean by grace? Define grace precisely, not vaguely. Grace is not just God's favor. God's favor at Christ's expense, things like that. Grace is a real participation in the divine life. I must tell you about theosis in First Peter. And grace is a created habit infused by God into the soul. I can't really get away from grace. Grace is certain participation in the divine nature. And so we must look at 1 Peter, 2 Peter. 2 Peter 1:4. Partakers of the divine nature. 2 fundamental kinds of grace. Actual grace, God's movement in the soul that enlightens the intellect, strengthens the will, and always precedes conversion. It's usually called prevenient grace. The movement of free will toward God is caused by God. Sanctifying grace or habitual grace, a stable gift dwelling in the soul, makes the soul pleasing to God, and it grounds our justification and defines our merit. Grace does not merely assist, it transforms. Onwardly, grace perfects nature, doesn't replace it. One of Aquinas' most famous principles, gratia non talit naturam sed perfectit. Grace does not destroy nature, but perfects it. This is crucial. Grace heals what sin wounded. Grace elevates nature beyond what it ever could have achieved on its own. All right, I'm going to stop there.